All right, everybody, welcome to a special edition of iSocial Talks. I'm Brian Fanzo, better known as iSocialFanz on the Twitters, and we're doing a nighttime edition of iSocial Talks. It's 9 p.m. here on the East Coast, 6 p.m. out there out west, and I'm joined by the founder of TACTspace. Are you in Arizona today, Eddie?
I am, a friend.
All right, in Arizona, where I just recently moved from. But so we're talking, the title of today's blab is sensory messaging versus the Apple iWatch, and really what, wearable technology, where it's going, and really what you're doing at TACTspace. So we've talked a couple times really about the Indiegogo campaign that you have with the wearable technology, but kind of give everybody an overview of the technology. I'll drop the link there in the comments so people can kind of brush up on it, but it'll be a good job to kind of keep the conversation going. And then I would love to hear the people in the audience, their opinion on kind of the Apple Watch, and then really wearable technologies going beyond just, I'd say, a geek gadget to do more tech stuff.
Yeah. So, Brian, thanks for the introduction, man. My name is Eddie Bugg. I'm the founder of TACTonics LLC, now based in Phoenix, Arizona. We have two products under development now. One we call TACTspace, the mobile app that we have in development, which will be free for everyone to use. And then there's the TACTpuck, the wearable device. Brian might be able to show you one there off screen in a little bit when he can get to it. But it is a small wearable device designed to be worn anywhere on your person so that you can receive what we call sensory messaging. So we've talked about this a lot in our last couple of sessions, kind of an education, but think of sensory messaging as the equivalent to text messaging without the text, without the letters, without the words, without having to look at your phone. So if we were to meet for the first time, we might shake hands. Or we might embrace. Those are all ways we do sensory messaging when we're in person. The question is it possible for us to be able to communicate and message with our other senses, like sense of touch, remotely? What if you're 100 miles away, 500 miles away? Could I send you a hug? Could I send you an embrace? Could I send you a high five? I think the answer is yes, and we'll be able to do that through sensory messaging with the use of the app and the use of the wearable device. Now, Brian has mentioned that we do have an Indiegogo campaign running right now. So the TACTpuck is available for ordering at the site that Brian will put the link up for. And there's the TACTpuck, kind of hard to see, but you get the idea of the size of it, and that'll be important when we talk about the iWatch. And the Indiegogo campaign, I think, has 26 days, something like that. But we've had some of the best contributors, if you will, come from these blab sessions, Brian. Maybe the numbers aren't huge, but a lot of the, let's call them random non-friends and family or colleague contributors have come from these blab sessions. So I'm very much thankful for that going forward. Yes, we've been going through these last couple of sessions, just basically turning it back to the audience and saying, look, ask your questions, and I will answer, and give you an answer to those technical questions. Sometimes it seems like this whole sensory messaging platform is difficult for everybody to get their head around at first. It's really quite simple, but I can understand why it might be overwhelming to everyone. But today, we wanted to address a question we get repeatedly. So I do have a somewhat canned and prepared answer. We're going to explore the differences between the haptic messaging and sometimes I think it's called the haptic engine that you'll find on the new Apple iWatch. So I did my research. I watched the little video like 6 times over the last few weeks to understand exactly what you can and can't do with the Apple iWatch when it comes to haptic messaging, Brian. And I got to tell you this, when things like that come out, the use of haptic or touch messaging, inventors or entrepreneurs can react a number of different ways. I'll just name 2. One, you can just throw up your hands and say, well, that's it. They've intruded on my patent. I'm going to go after them, and I'm just going to quit all this, okay? Or you look at that technology and say, you know what, it's not competing. It's actually complementing or affirming the public's need and desire to do something other than read and see their messages. So that's how I see it. I think the Apple Watch one day, if I were to own one, would be great. And I think that having haptic messaging as part of it would be a great option. But as it is today, there's some very differentiating features that I want to get into about the iWatch versus TACTspace.
Yeah, and so real quick, we both are Pebble wearers. Now my Pebble is dead, so it's not on my wrist right now. But you have your Pebble Watch on, and the idea for the Pebble Watch, from even wearable technology as a whole, I like to think of it. I'm able to prioritize my list, my notifications that get to my wrist. You get different ringtones for different callers who call on your phone, but really the limitations are kind of stopped there when we're talking about really what wearable technology is. So I know for some of our viewers, when we're talking about wearable technology, this is a wearable that I was showing here earlier, but also along with the fact that this is a wearable, it's a wearable beyond just your wrist. So I think that's already something that, I think the iWatch, last time I checked, I haven't seen many people, wearing it in jewelry or putting it into, different things that we kind of talked about on here. Even the idea of putting it on a keychain or putting it somewhere against your skin that is, either in sight, like I had talked about, like if my wife put it on a necklace, on a chain, or if it's somewhere, out of sight. So I think that's kind of one of the ones that's really interesting. But if you want to get into kind of, when we think about the iWatch, I think the iWatch is probably, for most people, the first wearable technology they really ever heard of, because a lot of the Jawbone, even though a lot of those ones are out there for us technology people, I think they're the wearables themselves were really brought to the market because of the iWatch. So I'm really interested to hear kind of where.
Okay, so let me kind of keep I'm going to keep this kind of rolling. I respect people's time and the time of day. At this time of day, you probably should be with your family if you have a family. Hopefully, we got some other maybe young single people tuning in tonight. This is a different time for us, and it will be available for replay. So let me see if I can keep it structured to like 5 points. I'm going to give you 5 points that we can talk about that I would consider to be differentiators between what Apple's doing with the iWatch and what we're trying to do with TACTspace. The first one is probably the most important one, and when people have asked me this question before, this is usually the first thing that tips them off about the difference. So for the iWatch, haptic messaging is a feature of the watch. For TACTspace, we consider sensory messaging a movement. That means that we see a vision to where people will be communicating through sensory messaging or tacting the same way people communicate today through texting. So the first point I want to make is there is a universal platform, a universal language to sensory messaging. Whereas if you're familiar with the iWatch and you understand the haptic technology that's built into it, there is no language for that. You can choose to tap on your iWatch and your corresponding person's iWatch would feel that tap pressure, I think, as well as the pattern. Or you can draw something with your finger on your iWatch and they can see the same thing illustrated for them as the way you drew it. And then I think the third feature is that you can actually receive your heartbeat with your iWatch and send your actual heartbeat to the recipient. So that's kind of the limit. But there, unless you have some coded message for each one of those things as to what they mean, there's no universality to the language. If you were to send it to someone else or a different group, or another iWatch wearer, they wouldn't know what that haptic message meant necessarily. So TACTspace is about setting up a menued list of 30 to 50, and we think it'll grow to more than that, standardized messages that'll be universally understood by anyone who receives a message. So think of something silly like LOL for laugh out loud. Well, everybody knows what that means now because we've all adopted that language. Right. So the universality of the language is what's kind of different with TACTspace. It'll be known across all users. And I do want to add this, though. You will have the freedom to create your own TACT messages, too. So if Brian and I wanted to have a message only he and I understood, and it said, hey, let's meet for a beer or something at our usual place, then I could create that message, the stimuli that goes along with that. I would share it with Brian, and he and I would know what that particular message means. So the users will be able to create their own, but we will start with a standardized universal language. So Anyone with any questions or comments about this?
Drew asked a question in the comments. He said, can the TACTspace technology give feedback to a user through the sensor triggers, for instance, moisture, temperature, pressure, humidity?
Well, I'm just going to give a straight, blunt, simple answer and say no. It's not a device that senses things on the outside. Instead, it's a device that delivers stimuli to the wearer. So it's a little bit different in terms of it not monitoring the conditions around, measuring your heartbeat or your body temperature. There are apps out there that do that, or wearables that do that. This is about a device that will deliver the message to you so that you can feel it. Though, great question. All right, so let me jump to the second one, and Brian's already touched on it. So we applaud when we look at Apple and the iWatch. I thought about we should have like a what do you call that? World Federation wrestling match tonight between Apple and TACTspace. I think I know who would win. But instead of going through all that drama, we see, I own Apple devices. I love Apple technology. I know you do too, Brian. We applaud Apple's efforts to free us from our phones. I think as users, mobile users like we have on the Blab today, we applaud companies that are trying to relieve our hands and faces of always having phones and distracted by them all the time. And that's what Apple's done with the watch. TACTspace wants to take it a step further. As Brian said, we not only want to free ourselves from our phones by using a Bluetooth paired device, but I want to free you from your wrist as well. So I want to make sure these messages can be received with the TactPuck anywhere you want to wear the device. You don't have to just wear it on your wrist. This is a much smaller, more discreet, sleek device that can be worn really anywhere in your clothing, in your pocket, in your jewelry. As long as it's against your skin, you're going to be able to feel it, and people are going to have the benefit of choosing wherever they want to wear their TactPuck. Wonder if there are any questions about that.
All right, so there's a couple of people that said they're going to check the replay, that they're really interested into it. Someone
asked about the size, and you
the size. Yeah, I showed the size there. No, yeah, and I think that's also interesting too, just from a I like the discussion on really it's enabling your Apple device to allow you to do more than just what the Apple device is served for today, right? We all love it, but what more can it do for us? And I think the idea of even having the little notch, I don't know how well I can show that on here, but it shows a little bit, but okay on there. But I think that's also how does that play into the sensoring? I think you'll probably get to that, but I think that's one I think that makes it interesting as well.
Well, the puck's pretty cool. I mean, let's face it, it can deliver 3 or 4 different stimuli, including the pop-out button that I think that Brian was referring to. So imagine like on Facebook when people want to reach out and poke someone, that using the TactPuck with this pop-out button, you could actually physically poke someone remotely using this device. So that again, not bragging, but just trying to say it's protected intellectual property because it's got a full utility patent against it. So you won't see your iWatch ever do that as long as my patent stays intact. Let's talk about platform. That's the third thing. The haptic messaging feature that you see on the iWatch, as far as I understand, can only be used with 2 iWatch wearers. Okay, if you don't have an iWatch, you're not going to participate in haptic messaging using the iWatch. Anyone who downloads the TACTspace app, anyone, whether they have the wearable or not, are going to be able to send sensory messaging. So we're not confining our messaging just from one device to another device. Instead, you can send group TACT messages just like you send group text messages, and you will be able to use the TACTspace app even if you don't want to wear the wearable device. So let's say your parents or your grandparents really aren't into wearing wearables yet, but they would love to be able to send you a message. They'll be able to use the TACTspace app, send you a message, I'm thinking of you, I love you, good luck on your test, and you'd be able to receive it if you're wearing the wearable. Does that make sense?
No, it does, and I think that's something. And I think that's important too, just from the standpoint of not only does it doesn't matter. You could you could buy one of the pucks, send it to or buy two of the pucks and send it to two different people, and yet you could have 20 people participate on sending those messages to those two people. And I think that part of that many to one relationship, and really allowing we were talking about militaries, or there's someone that we were Kristen Cardos, who's in here, my community manager. She was talking about with her husband being a motorcyclist, right? You could have it for his long motorcycle trips, and it wouldn't just be Kristen, his wife, being able to send him messages. It could be anyone who downloads the app that can connect to that. I think that's a powerful message.
Well, I'll get to this later in our vision, but we're going to be able to launch sensory messaging. You're going to be able to attack from any device, from the internet, from social media platforms. So let's say you're on Facebook and you're doing your usual thing, and you decide you see someone on there who has their TACPuck enabled. You'll be able, from that Facebook platform, perhaps, to send that message. So unlike the iWatch, that can only be done on that device on their wrist to someone else with their device on their wrist, this is a little bigger platform to work from. And let's get to the obvious one. Number 4 is affordability. Now, this one's pretty easy to understand. Now, Brian mentioned, and I just received my steel Pebble watch in the mail today, but I'm not allowed to open it, according to my wife, until my birthday. That's a number of days away. But the plastic one I've had almost 2 years. Incredible, cool, wearable device. But I'm just being honest. I can't afford the iWatch, the Apple iWatch right now. So I consider this kind of the poor man's version. Sorry, Pebble. Poor man's version to a nice wearable watch that has wonderful functionality. I wear it every day. I've got lots of other fancy watches that people have given me over the years. I strap this plastic rubber thing on about every day. So when it comes to affordability, I don't know. I think the cheapest iWatch I found was like $325 or something for the sports version. The TACPuck is available now on the Indiegogo campaign for less than $89 a piece, and even less than that if you buy more than one. And remember, the app itself is free. So, I've already said it, but if the app is free, you'll be able to still enjoy sending sensory messaging. I'm hoping that one day you're going to say, boy, I sure would like to receive one, and ultimately get a puck. But the cost is, a lot less than $325, and not everyone can afford that. Have we put up the link to the Indiegogo campaign?
Yep. I guess we have. Links out there. And actually, for anybody who tells a little bird over there, I actually have the bit.ly link to the Indiegogo campaign in the title of the episode. So if you share that out, you'll actually that'll actually be shared out with the link to not only the blab, but it'll include the link to the Indiegogo campaign as well. So appreciate anybody that's watching this and supporting. This is an Indiegogo campaign where we're kind of educating a market on not only the power of this technology, but the idea of not only crowdsourcing through live streaming, but crowdfunding through Indiegogo. So this is definitely leveraging not only change, but we're kind of teaching change, we're leveraging change, and we're leveraging change technology. So that's kind of what we're doing there with the link. So I think you got to jump into the next the advantage over there over the Apple Watch.
Last point, guys. I want to keep it short tonight. So we talked about differentiation in the universal language. Then we went and talked about the freedom from our phones, freedom from our wrists, the platform itself for TACTspace being different, and affordability. But the last point I think is probably the most fun one to talk about as a visionary like you, Brian, is the vision for TACTspace. I think is much different. The wearable technology and the TACPuck itself that Brian was showing you, for us, is our way to introduce the world to sensory messaging. Now, there are a lot of other patent-protected ideas and claims around including the same sensory messaging into things like teddy bears. We talked about this, stuffed animals that kids could have when they go to bed, and sensory messages could be sent from their parents in a way that they could feel that on their favorite nighttime toy. They receive a sensory message even though their parents might be a long distance away on business or maybe in the military. Picture frames and other kinds of tchotchkes, if that's still a word, things that you find your wife has put on the shelves that collect a lot of dust, those things. Well, picture frames could have pictures of, the sender who might send the sensory message. And when the message is received, it would be received by the receiver's phone and pushed to the picture frame, and the frame would light up a different way. Or one of the coolest, most obnoxious things I can think of is a string of Christmas tree lights. I would send these to Brian for Christmas. He'd put them all up. They would be geared with sensory messaging. I'd be able to send a TACT message to Brian's phone. It would push from Brian's phone to his Christmas tree lights, and they would just flash on and off obnoxiously and play jingle bells or something, right? So these are other things and other peripheral devices that we see will be developed by Tactonics, the name of my company. But we wanted to introduce the world to sensory messaging using the TACT puck. It's just the beginning of the vision, we have for sensory messaging. If we can get people to embrace it in small pockets or small user groups, I think it could spread, like wildfire. It will just take that initial movement.
No, I love it, and I'm going to pull up right now. I was going to pull up the link to our previous couple of blabs that we have done, where we kind of talked a little bit about the original story and how everything kind of come together. So I'm going to drop that link in there for anybody that's watching on Blab or watching the replay. They can the original story, because I think a lot of this really comes down to your vision and your story, as well as really what the technology is about. And I think the possibilities and the future of the technology are so kind of endless. We were even joking with the idea where you could leverage smell if you wanted to, right? And you could, if because I think that's part of the patent. Is that correct?
It is, and it will be a future functionality tied with warming effect. So the TACT puck would warm a few degrees, so you could feel that warming against your skin, and actually the smell or scent sensory stimuli is built into that warming. So just imagine a sticker that you would put on your puck in the morning that was impregnated with the smell of vanilla or rose or Chanel No. 5, whatever the person wants to smell that day. And then the sender could send messages that included that warming effect, which would also release the aroma. So you can't send any smell you want or any aroma you want. That's probably a good thing. But the wearer is always in control. And in this case, the wearer would choose their scent at the beginning of the day that they might want to enjoy.
So we did have a question from Kristen. She actually said, other than ordering or just sharing their info, is there anything we can do as the community to support it, or is it really just about spreading the word at this point? So I thought it's a really good question.
Well, I'm all for prayer. And I'm not joking. For those of you that are of faith, there can never be too much prayer. There are a lot of people praying for this technology right now to get off the ground and hopefully be a positive, do-good influence. So all of the examples I've tried to give are ones that are designed to encourage people. And I don't want to be critical of other technologies, but I've said this before. A lot of wearable technologies that are out there today are really about monitoring yourself, understanding yourself better, how well you run, how well you exercise, how well you sleep, right? And I could go on. And they're wonderful technologies. I own some of them. I have a Fitbit. I use it, okay? So I'm not putting that down. But I want to differentiate TACTspace as a wearable device and an app that's designed for you to be able to reach out to others and encourage them, lift them up, cheer them up. The world is full of negative people and haters, but I want this technology to get us out of our phones, stop thinking about ourselves quite so much, and maybe reaching out and encouraging others more. I can't say it any clearer. So anything you can do on that front would be great. And then I want you to know, announcement today, you'll see this if you follow us on any of the social networks, Facebook or Twitter or any of those. But TACTspace will be participating in an event here in Phoenix called the Phoenix Mobile Festival. And we'll get a link out there to everyone for that. But it's called the Phoenix Mobile Festival. And there's several hundred people coming on Saturday, this Saturday, all day. TACTspace will have a booth there, and we'll be talking to a lot of very smart people who are in this industry in wearables and in mobile technology. Intel is the primary sponsor there. Maybe Intel sponsor TACTspace to get launched if we put an Intel chip in every TAC puck. That would be fine by me. So, the other thing you could do for me is if there are target markets like Lindsay mentioned last week, she has a good contact in healthcare or a good contact in education or a good contact with someone with the blind and sight impaired. And Lindsay also knows people who are involved in children with, let's call it special needs around sensory processing disorder. If you have a contact like that and you could tweet us about it, I would be indebted to you. If I need to sit down with those folks and pitch to a broader audience, I'm happy to do it. All those are opportunities to us, and we're going to be taking them. So come see us Saturday if you're in Arizona. Look up the link. You'll find it if you follow us for the Phoenix Mobile Festival. I think it's like the fifth one they've had. But they invited us, and we're going to participate. We're going to be giving stuff away, Brian, and hopefully making some good contacts and networks. So thanks, everybody, for joining in at this kind of different night hour. And don't take any more time from your families. Invite your friends to see the replay.
I love it, Eddie. And you know what? We originally resonated because my social philosophy is pretty simple. It's show you care, and it's about finding unique ways to stand out, provide value, and ultimately be remembered. And I think that's a hard thing to do in today's digital age and technology. And I think anybody that is tuning in and watch this, that's ultimately what your vision is there at TACTspace and with the wearable technology. So those of you that, if you're just jumping in now, make sure to check out the replay. This is the size of the wearable puck that Eddie was talking about. Check them out at the TACTspace on Indiegogo. It is in the link there on the title. I will keep that as the title of this blab for the recording. So anybody that shares this out afterwards is also doing us a favor to letting people know about the technology and about the crowdfunding campaign. So Eddie, thanks again for joining us. I'm excited to hopefully educate the world and drive this change with the technology across the board. And good night to you out there in Arizona.
Good night.